integrity. That's called courage.
Free up your mind, use your imagination.
All you need to know is I'll get you there.
Learning.
Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
Welcome to the Openhouse podcast. Our guests are our students, opinionated, daring, and ridiculously smart. They ask tough questions about life and about learning. This podcast is by them and for them. Thank you so much, Anjali and Subhiksha, for joining me today for this episode on periods and how they are perceived in school. Every day, there are nearly 800 million women around the world who are on their period. Yet, we are so far away from a world where everyone has access to the resources needed to manage menstruation, and further from a world where we don't consider menstruation disgusting or talking about it yucky. Today's episode is about the attitude towards periods in schools among teenagers. It's, anyways, a complicated time. You're hitting puberty and your bodies are changing, and nobody around you seems to be talking about periods like they are a normal part of life. We really have a powerhouse of a panel today. Our student speaker is Anjali Surana, a 12th grader from Calcutta International School. She founded Fullstopp Organization, which seeks to change how periods are perceived in society across economic and social strata. Recently, they were awarded by Alert NGO for improving awareness and access to menstrual health. The team aims to achieve a day where no menstruator is held back by a phenomenon as natural as menstruation. Our guest speaker today is Subhiksha Manoj, who is a project associate at Boondh. Boondh is a social enterprise based in Bangalore that works along the intersections of menstrual literacy, advocacy, policy, programming, and sustainable products. Welcome to the podcast. My first question is actually about how we refer to periods in the first place. We use so many euphemisms. Can you tell us about some of those, and why are we so hesitant to say menstruation or to say periods? Either of you can start.
I'll go first if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me alongside such a great speaker. I'm just so excited for today's conversation. I think when it comes to code words, there are so many that I've used, right? Especially in school, because you're all like creative and you have to keep coming up with new ways to address periods because people find out soon. So I remember my best friend actually came up with Japan because the Japan flag is like white with like a red dot. And we just get very creative. Sometimes it makes no sense. One of my seniors, they just call it penguin for some reason. Like sometimes it makes no sense at all. But the bottom line is, even though they're extremely like fun, they can be fun to use. I find them extremely dangerous because of the fact that subconsciously we're reaffirming that periods should not be openly talked about, and we're consequently just perpetuating the taboo. Globally, according to this one report that was published 2 years back, there are over 5,000 euphemisms for periods, right? And I find that a little problematic. It's normal. Periods are natural. They're normal. Just call it what it is, right? And I think this also creates problems when you're trying to host awareness. So whenever we host awareness sessions, right, with marginalized communities, I mean, they've stopped after COVID, but when we used to do it before COVID, it used to be really hard to talk to them about periods because there were not enough like words for like uterus in Hindi. Like, I'm not sure what the word for that is. Even if there is a word for it, it's not very well known, right? So same thing went for periods. When I said periods, many people, even those who came from fairly like English medium backgrounds, were not very like okay with using it, or they just hadn't used it a lot of times before. And that makes language communication, especially with respect to awareness about periods, a lot harder, which is why I think we need to stop using code words.
That's very interesting, Anjali. I also thought about this a lot. The how we actually spread awareness in vernacular languages, because so many regular words that especially like my generation, we don't know some of the regular words that are spoken in my language, like for example Tamil, right? So I don't know what periods is actually in Tamil, right? And so when we talk about awareness and actually saying periods and calling it for what it is, and not saying that day of the month, for example, we are again looking at a very English medium school where middle class kids or upper middle class kids actually come to study. But what about government schools? How are they approaching it? And if the entire curriculum is in the mother tongue, then how is that working out for them? And even if I try to find out if there are any documents or materials online, it's so hard to find them because nothing in Tamil actually pops up for me. So that's a interesting perspective, and I think a lot of it is just related to I don't know how we're taught in the house itself. Like even when guests come and gather in the house, whenever periods comes up, it's always suddenly the volume frequency goes down. It's all spoken in hushed tones, right? And as a child, you sort of pick up on that, and even if you question it, there's nobody to guide you and nurture that curiosity, but it's immediately shunned. And so you pick that up from there and maybe enter schools. We don't really know how that starts, but it's definitely surrounding shame.
Subhiksha, it's very interesting that you mentioned that because my next question was that do schools have a responsibility uh, to spread menstrual awareness? And Anjali, my question to you was that are schools taking this initiative?
Yeah, I definitely think it's their responsibility. You go to like school is a learning hub, right? And who like learning is not limited to like math or science. It's learning about all aspects. Of course, that might not be how things are being executed today, but I feel like the ideal situation is where you are learning about, you're having sex education, you're learning about periods, right? You're learning about gender orientations. School is a place for holistic growth, and it's important that these conversations are had in the classroom setting, because again, when you're not having these conversations in the classroom setting, where like society is just reiterating to young minds that talking about periods is not okay, it's not something that's encouraged, you should not talk about periods. So again, that again is like harmful and is perpetuating the taboo. So definitely schools have the responsibility to do that. We had I think having like the sex talk or talking about consent and periods is important, but also how you talk about it is extremely important. So in my school, we were given like the period talk, but all the girls were told to go aside in one class, and were separated. And I come from like an international school, and most people would like, I mean, you can argue that it's one of the schools that relatively has a lot more open conversations. Like I argue the dress code with my principal. We have discussions about it, we have a lot of discourse. And even like in my school, if we're like segregating the girls, the female students, and talking to periods about them in such a shushed and like hidden manner, then that is again problematic, right? And I can't imagine how worse this situation is in reality in other schools, or not just like private schools, but especially like government schools, right? So it's important that everybody spoken to about periods. When we had the sex talk, the girls so there was a session with girls, a session with the guys, and then with all of us together. And I think that like the last part of it, where all of us were sitting together, was great. And I think the same needs to be done when we're talking about periods. Both men, women, and any other genders need to know about like periods. And also, yeah, when you're like segregating like just women, with like female bodies to talk about periods, you're also reaffirming the idea that only like women menstruate, and that's not true, right? Like not all those who menstruate are women. So and like when you segregate them, it's really wrong of us to sort of boil down women, like our definition of women, to those who menstruate, right? And that again is another debate, but that's problematic in itself. So I think it's really important for schools to talk about periods, and also really important to keep in mind how you're addressing periods when you're having that conversation. And okay, also like it's also important not to have just one conversation, right? I think like when you're in grade 6, you start talking about periods. In grade 7, a little more, 8, it's a continuous conversation. It's because when you like just have a 2-hour conversation, you really overwhelm a young mind with so much information, and it just feels like something you're taking off the to-do list. So it's really important that it's a continuous conversation that you're having with young minds from a young age.
I think it's super important for schools to have the conversation, and I think they should do it in more than just one way, right? Mostly, the menstruation as a topic comes up when you're in ninth or eighth grade, and there's this a body anatomy class, and and that is most likely to be skipped. It was in my case, like I never had that. Even boys and girls separate did not happen. In school. So it's important to actually have that topic, have both boys and girls in the class, and actually have a conversation. But other than that as well, right? I think that we need to attack the taboo as well in schools, like not just bodily knowledge and giving the students bodily knowledge about menstruation, where they bleed from, where they pee from, etc. It's also important to say that this is not a shameful thing, it's natural, and you have to sort of address the taboo associated with it as well. And most of it can happen maybe in, I don't know, life skills classes, because life skill is usually classes where you're taught how to respect others, or how to how to carry yourself, how to believe in yourselves and stuff like that, right? So maybe there this could fit in. I am not sure, this is just a thought that I'm having right now, but it's important to tackle both of those in school itself, because otherwise you just know what's going on in your body, but you're also having a lot of other questions. And Anjali just said, not all women menstruate, right? And there was this, I was listening to another, I think a live session or a video. I'm not sure where this was, but apparently an NGO went to schools in Kerala to conduct a session on menstrual health and hygiene. And one girl, and when there was a question session, right, they asked them, do you have any questions for us? And there was this young girl who got up and she said, I didn't get my periods. I'm almost 15 years old or something. All my friends got their periods. Does this mean that I'm not, that there's something wrong with me? I seriously feel like, I have some defect. And this is when they realize that maybe this is something that we need to address as well. So menstrual disorders need to be addressed as well. Labor needs to be addressed as well. So there's a lot to uncover, right? And the way to begin is dissecting into sections and just like, having these conversations.
And I feel like sometimes the way schools go about it is they make it extremely formal, like a very formal educational session. I feel like it should just integrate it into natural, like classroom moments. I remember in grade 5, one of my friends, a male friend, he just asked our teacher, we keep seeing these ads, these whisper ads on TV, what are they for, right? Like he didn't know about periods, right? And my teacher totally didn't acknowledge his question and just move on and just change the topic really quickly. I feel like when these questions are raised, these are natural moments, right? So seek it, start talking about periods then, and I feel like you can really normally, naturally integrate conversations about periods, about consent, gender orientations, a lot of things in a normal way. Like we don't have to really have these formal sessions that take place, like in the second semester of 8th grade, or only when you're studying biology and you reach the reproductive health chapter. Like I really feel it's important to address them in a normal way.
Why do boys need to be a part of this conversation? What happens when they are not?
Okay, periods are extremely stressful, right? Like there are cramps, you have nausea, some people have diarrhea, body pain, the list is endless, right? And on top of that, you have the stress of worrying about whether you're leaking through your pants. I'm always stressed about, because my periods are fairly irregular. Sometimes they happen in 25 days, sometimes they don't happen for like 5 weeks. So I don't know when I'll get my period. And every time I go outside after like 25 days after my period, I'm always like super stressed about, what if I get my period and I don't have a pad on me, right? So what happens when you talk about periods to men is that stress those stress levels really reduce. And just because of how normal the conversation is, you're not as worried about leaking through your pants. You know that if if I'm with my family in a restaurant and I get my period, I can openly say that, hey, I got my period and I need to run to the nearest chemist or whatever. And because like if that taboo is there, you don't feel comfortable telling, like, let's say if your dad's also on the table or your brother's there, or you have male friends, and you're going out with your friends. So I feel like it really helps with like just normalizing the conversation. I feel like it'll really help with just women managing their periods better, because a lot of times what happens is, like, just taking a very niche example, but when let's say you got your period suddenly and you don't have like pads around you, and you don't want to like address that you've gotten your periods because there's a male gathering around, you'll think of makeshifts like toilet paper and other alternatives that's not as hygienic, right? And that's harmful for your body. So it's very important for men to be included in this conversation. They're like almost half the population. You can't like leave them out of the conversation. That it just won't work that way.
Yeah, also I think it's a basic biological function, right? So if guys know what fever is, guys know what cold cough is, guys know what all of those is, they can know what menstruation is all about as well, right? It's a very very natural process, like we've been saying for a while now. So there's no reason for them not to know. And like Anjali said, it also helps with us handling situations with less stress, and for the conversation, for entire conversation to become almost a non-issue, right? But it's also thinking about it from like a more long-term perspective, right? Menstruation, like menopause itself, is not discussed at all. Menopause happens, you actually, mostly women have families and they have children, husband, and we all have to like work together to sort of make it easy for the one who's going through menopause, because menopause itself is largely not discussed, and there are not many workplace policies that actually allow for them to take it easy a few days, and so all of these and the gender roles that we have don't make it very easy, for menstruating persons. So in that sense also, if you look at it, if men know about all of these things, like read detailed about the menstrual disorders itself and menopause, like the whole picture, right? It helps them to actually help out in the household as well if necessary, or just be kind towards one another, space for each other.
Wait, let me add one thing, just super important. I'm sorry, it just strikes later when she's speaking. I'm just like, yeah, I really feel like this needs to be a part of the conversation as well. So whatever we're talking about right now is at the micro level, right? But it becomes super important for men to be a part of this conversation at the macro level, right? Because, at dinner table conversations, you're talking about corruption, you're talking about slow economic growth and things. Period poverty, menstrual injustice is just another issue we're facing nationally and globally, right? And since there's a low representation of women, at the decision making table, in politics, when it comes to positions of authority, it becomes a lot more important for men to be a part of that conversation, so policies can be directed at tackling menstrual injustice and period poverty at the more national and global level, and like tackle it at the more structural level, and not just, hey, we're addressing 1,000 menstruators and giving them pads today, right? We need more structural integrated policies to tackle this issue as a whole. So
What about some of the taboos around periods? Anjali, I mean, in your own daily life, I remember when we were in school, just going to the bathroom with the pad was such a big deal. Can you talk about some of these experiences?
Yeah. So I think I come from a big place of privilege, because the taboos I face, I'm not trying to compare and I'm not trying to invalidate my lived experiences or lived experiences of those that are similar to me and come from like a similar socio-economic strata. But it's very different, right? The kind of taboo I face. For me, it's like, as you mentioned, when we go to the washroom in school, right, you'll probably have the pad on the underside of your sleeve. When you're asking like the teacher whether you can go to the washroom, you'll never say that I'm on my period and I need to like change my pad or I need to refresh myself. It's always, can I go to the washroom? And you know how teachers are really skeptical about how you're going to the washroom to waste time. If they say no, then you just sit there stressed about, hey, I hope I don't leak in the next 20 minutes until it's lunchtime when I can go and change my pad. Right? And it's happened so many times with me as well. I never argued like, no, I need to go to the washroom now, because I need to go now. Because like, I know that would mean acknowledging my period, and that's not something you can do very openly in a classroom setting. Would I do that today? Maybe, but it's taken a lot of conversations about periods to get me here, right? So you can just imagine how big the taboo is, how prevalent it is. And I also remember that in grade 8 or 7, so one of my friends got their period for the first time, okay, and she leaked. And, on the chair, she started crying, and the teacher told all the students to like leave the classroom. And, and she just felt so embarrassed. She didn't come to school for the rest of the week. And I felt like that also was one of the major reasons, one of those trigger points where I was just like, hey, I need to do something about, menstrual inequity and try to break this taboo. So yeah, there's a lot of taboo that I face, but the kind of taboo that people from different socioeconomic strata face is much worse. There are people who aren't allowed, and I know this from firsthand, like conversations with these communities, they're not allowed to go out of their house. They're not allowed to touch anybody. They're not allowed to attend school. They're missing out on an education for 5 days each month. They're not allowed to sleep on the same bed. I know some people who are told to go and sleep on this like haystack area behind their house, right? And you can just imagine how embarrassing that is, and how you're not giving dignity to a menstruator for a phenomena that's as natural as periods. So of course there's a huge taboo, and the only way to address it is by having a lot of conversations. This is one. We just need a lot more like these, and we have to make sure it's not like we're not caught up in an echo chamber where we're only talking about periods in like a certain part of society. These conversations need to reach both rural, urban, even in the urban, like all different socioeconomic backgrounds basically.
So Subhiksha, can you bring some of your experiences at Boondh to this conversation?
Sure, thank you. So before I do move ahead with this question, I just want to make a point. When Anjali mentioned that when we discuss policies, right, it's important for men to actually know what we're dealing with. And I also want to say that most of the time, all the time, it's best to have a menstruating person along with you, like have consultations with menstruating persons, know from them what they need, right? And then move ahead with the policy. Otherwise, even if you do have basic knowledge, it doesn't really help and doesn't match up to anybody's lived experiences. And to be able to get that nuance, right, you need to have people from the community itself. This is just an add-on to what Anjali had said, just to make that clear. But other than that, I also, coming to, the taboos, it's countless. From my personal experience, I remember we had a PT class, so all of us were out. And then the class leader, who was the boy, was asked to go check everybody's bags. Apparently, somebody had brought a cell phone along with them. So they wanted to find out who it was. And I remember all the girls freaking out and stressing about, oh my God, is he going to see the pad? The pad is inside my bag. He's going to see it. And I am thinking about it right now. I totally forgot about this until this very moment. But that was one instance, and there's also a lot of other instances that we've been seeing in our responses. So we are doing a campaign at Boondh. It's called Stop Period Penalty. So what we aim to do with that campaign is address these instances of menstrual discrimination and exclusion, and actually find a way to establish some mechanisms put some mechanisms in place to address it. So we are doing it in like three facets. So one of it is actually sending out a survey and collecting responses to see where and how people are being discriminated. And one of the biggest trends that we are seeing when we're analyzing it is that a lot of them are talking about school. They're all saying, when I was in school, I accidentally stained my skirt and I was laughed at, and the teacher did not help me out in any way. I just had to call my parents and leave. Or there are other people who say that there was this one instance where the teacher itself shamed me for getting a pad. So they were murmuring in class asking, do you have a pad? And then the teacher caught them and said, why can't you bring your own? What kind of a girl are you? Something like that. And asked them to leave the class. So there are a lot of instances like this as well. So the school. So these are just some examples.
I have a distinct memory of being in class 10 and I had an exam a day or two later. I was talking to a friend, and we were just joking about how we should just be allowed to take a hot water bottle in the exam hall because we were in so much pain, right? Can you talk about some of these experiences? Like, what is it like to be on your period during an exam or during a sports event?
Right. So I'm somebody that's like, I play a lot of sports. I've been extremely active throughout, like since I think junior school. So yeah, I feel like people don't talk enough about periods at the intersection of sports, not just at the school level, but even when you'd like discuss national level sports or the Olympics as well. I remember in the last Olympics, there was this one swimmer, a female swimmer, who got her period and on the finals day of the swimming Olympics, and she couldn't perform her best, and she took a lot of medication to delay her period, right? And that actually had adverse effects on her body, and she either fainted before the event or after the event, or just couldn't do her best, right? And like that created a lot of like outrage, and like, why aren't we talking about this? It's so important that we talk about this, right? And I think when you talk about exams, so I have the worst cramps. I'm not joking. I've been hospitalized twice because my cramps were that bad. Like they're terrible. Like if not all periods, at least like half of my periods, I have cramps that are that bad. And I remember last September when I was writing my exams, right? It was happening online, and my cramps were that bad, and I was going to faint. I was like, I need to lie down because I can't, like, I couldn't have like my heat pad on me that time, and none of the painkillers were working. So I, like, in the middle of the exam, I was like, teacher, I can't, I think I'm gonna faint, I need to go, right? And a week later, like 20 people texted me like, hey, I heard you had an anxiety attack during the exam. And I was like, no, that is not right at all. I had unbearable period cramps. And that's what happened. There was no anxiety attack. But just think of it, right? The fact that people don't realize how painful period cramps can be, and how they just rather jump to the conclusion that I was having an anxiety attack was because they can't believe that like my cramps were that bad that I actually needed to excuse myself. Is again, like, it goes to show the lack of information and conversations around this topic, right? So it's extremely hard, and I really wish and I don't know exactly how you'd go about it. Should they have like a separate exam? Should they be given exemptions? I don't know. I'm not like in the school authorities. I'm not like those professionals. But I know that this is a problem, and I really feel like it needs to be addressed, because you're giving exceptions when people are sick, when they have fever, when they, have a cold, as she just mentioned, right? And like a previous question, you need some mechanism that's like addressing this as well, because for some people it's really bad, and I speak from personal experience when I say it. It's truly unbearable. I'm sitting on my bed, I'm genuinely crying so many times as well, and I'm just telling my mom, listen, I want to get my uterus removed, like let me wait till I'm 18 now, but I was like, just let me wait till I'm 18. If you're not going to get it done for me when I start earning, I'll get it done myself. It's really bad, and I really wish, like, first of all, you can't even say it. So many people won't say it if they're having an exam, if they have cramps. If you have fever, you can easily say it, I'm sick. But you can't do that with periods, right? So that's the first barrier. And second, even if you do, nothing's going to be done. you feel like nothing's going to be done and you feel helpless, so you're just like, hey, let's just go with it.
And one thing that I was very interesting what Anjali said is, I feel like I don't want to do this anymore. I want to have my uterus removed, right? That's at some point of time we all feel so much pain, and
Yeah.
we do think those things. And in for some people it is very like they actually mean it when they say that they don't want to go through it. For especially for gender non-binary people, for example, trans men, trans persons who go through menstruation. Is not even for cis women who go through menstruation. It's not always a choice. You don't really have a lot of choice, and it's you have to acknowledge that it's a sort of a labor that you go through, right? And we need to acknowledge that, look at it from that perspective also. And severe pain has to be like a lot of it is also seen as PMS, right? Oh, she's missing. It's just that like you said, euphemisms are used, and you don't recognize it as something that's real. Actually, you don't recognize it as a lived experience. So that is very problematic, and I've actually, to be honest, not thought about this in that perspective, like not being able to write an exam, not being able to perform in something that you really want to do well. I've never thought about that because personally, I have my periods are not so my cramps are not so bad. It's just for the first day, but otherwise it's fine. But I can't imagine actually being hindered by that. When I can do better. So I think the schools should be able to do something about that, and should have local community meetings, right? Like just have teachers or even student council leaders. All our schools has that system, right? Student leaders. Maybe we can call them up and discuss these things with them as well. Maybe start there.
I can't help but bring up Zomato's period leave policy. There was so much discussion over it. At one point there were women who were rejoicing that such a big company had actually taken that step. But then there were also women who said that, hey, if you want equality, then don't ask for period leave. I want to understand what you guys think about that.
I'll be extremely honest, I don't have a concrete opinion on this.
Hmm.
But and that's because I honestly get both sides of the debate. Right? There were people like Barkha Dutt who spoke up and they're like, this is only going to worsen the inequality at the workplace. And I get that. In an ideal world, we should have period leaves. But reality is we're not in an ideal world. And this, having period leaves, already when we talk about the gender gap, everybody's like, women work less, women take maternity leaves, but nobody will go into the root cause, right? In the sense that why do women, because of the whole social institution that women are the ones who are supposed to take care of the baby, and the man is the breadwinner of the house and things like that, right? We're not talking about how we need more shared responsibilities at home. They'll only talk about how women go through pregnancy, they take maternity leaves, and they work less, which is why they're paid less, right? And the same argument will be used. And I feel like when we're addressing income gaps at the workplace or discrimination at the workplace, so I truly understand that point of the argument. But at the same time, as somebody who has extremely bad cramps, I also understand the other side of it, and I understand the need for period leaves. Because we need to normalize conversations about periods, but we cannot normalize period pain. Just because we go through periods every month, just because almost half the population has menstruated during their lifetimes, doesn't mean that period pain is normal, right? Just because it happens every month doesn't mean it's normal. And which is why I think period leaves are important in that sense. But again, I don't know. I really don't know, because in an ideal world, period leaves would be great. But again, we're not living in an ideal world, and this could open gateways to more discrimination, to more income gaps and things like that. So I don't know.
And so maybe the way that we are approaching it is wrong. it's not about giving 3 days leave. It's about, and I think there's another organization called Culture Machine, if I'm not wrong, that has given 1 day, the first day of period can be taken off. But again, if you look at it, for like pain and for people who have menstrual disorders, for people who have severe pain, right, it varies. It in fact varies every month. For some people, first day is very painful. For some people, the third day is painful. The end of the cycle is painful. For some people, 1 week before they actually bleed is painful. So how do you, it doesn't make sense to do such broad strokes, even when we are talking about policies that can benefit so many people. So maybe the way that we have to look at this is giving adjustable or considerable leaves, right? Adjustable meaning according to my needs, according to how I experience cramps, I can, access those leaves. Maybe that's the way to go. And if you do it that way, then it does make sense for people to have period leave, because when you are extremely sick, you do take the day off, right? You're not expected to battle your way out of that.
Yeah.
And same thing. But even otherwise, the entire work structure, like this entire capitalist work structure, we have to remember is largely based on the male body and what the male body can do. But it doesn't have any space for the hormonal changes that we go through. So we remember that as well. If it was largely based on female body, then maybe it won't be one entire week of 8-hour work. It might not even be that system in the first place. So we need to remember that as well. And when we create policies, acknowledge that we've left out this body type for the longest time, and now we have to hold space for that body type. These are the two things that I wanted to mention.
Maybe like you said, Subhiksha, a flexible leave policy. I was looking at Netflix's culture memo and what their work culture is really like, and they don't have a particular number of leaves that you can take. And in that memo, they really write that we know that there are people who might misuse this, the fact that there is no limit to the number of leaves that you can take, but in the interest of 90% of the people who will not misuse it, we want to keep this policy. Now I don't know what actually happens. Grass is always greener on the other side, but they have at least codified this. I also want to talk about the availability of hygiene products in schools. We see New Zealand like just making strides. Where do we stand? Where does India stand?
So I think sometimes it can be a little easy and a little more towards the idealistic than realistic side to say that, we should have free period products for everyone, because at the end of the day, we are a developing country and, we have limited resources. If it's up to me, obviously, I definitely really want free period products in all public spaces. But I feel like that said, it's so important to hold those that have the means and the resources accountable in providing free period products. When you go to an Inox, when you go to a movie hall, restaurants, right, you see that, they have free toilet paper, they have sanitizers, they have hand wash, whatnot, right? Why do they not have period products? If they have free toilet paper, then pads should be free too, right? Because they're as much of an essential item as toilet paper. And when you're not providing toilet paper, you're doing two things. One, you're reaffirming that period products are not an essential item. And this has like a overspilling effect, because I remember even in the beginning when the government was curating COVID relief kits, they didn't include period products at first because they didn't think it was an essential item, right? And I'm just saying, because that's the mindset that's created around us, right? And second, you're reaffirming that periods are not natural, right? Which is why you don't have them, you don't have period products in a public washroom, which is why I think it's extremely important to begin with, at least to have the private sector or anybody with the means and the resources to address this, make sure that they're held accountable. All public spaces, workspaces, corporate offices, movie halls, restaurants, those that that are able to provide period products in their washrooms definitely should. I think that'll go a long way to begin with, to normalize this topic and also just establish that periods are normal and period products are an essential item.
Even schools, right? I mean, in my school, if I needed a sanitary napkin from the medical room, I had to actually pay 15 rupees. Now, maybe I'm not carrying money that day, or a lot of times they won't even have a napkin for me to use.
Also, just like so in my school, it's like if you need a sanitary product, you go to the sick room, and I feel like that again has like a really adverse effect on like your mentality, because why do I have to go to the sick room, right, to get a sanitary product? Why are you equating having a period as like, why are you equating that with being sick, right? That's not okay. Period products should be in washrooms. If tall, I mean, think of it, right? Like, I don't see any other reason apart from patriarchy as to why we have toilet paper that's free everywhere but not period products.
I never actually thought of it like that, toilet paper and period products.
Yeah, and it's also not just in school, like how Anjali said, right? Even in public spaces, we need to have like a pad or whatever products available, and it's so important to have gendered approach to infrastructure. Mostly, how you rate a city's safety, how you is how feminist it is, if I can say, then definitely have washrooms that are clean, neat, that have the facility, that have menstrual products in it. Very recently, there was a, I think, report on in Indian Express, if I'm not wrong, highlighting that a slum in Pune now has a toilet that has soap, that has a towel and a sanitary napkin, and it's a very clean area which with all of those things, right? And that's very encouraging to hear that news, because we need those kind of spaces even in school. We do need what having pads or a vending machine or whatever does is that you confront it. Boys also confront it, like it's a reality. Girls or menstruating persons need to use pads or whichever menstrual project. So it helps with tackling shame itself. But apart from that, I think it's also important to realize that it's products, period products is not the end, right, to the problem of taboos and everything else. It's just one aspect. And so we need to sort of, like I said, have classes that deal with the taboos itself, rather than just giving them, handing out a product to them. Even there, they don't really have the opportunity to choose. I'm very sure that most of us didn't even know about cloth pads and menstrual cups, etc., right? We didn't know what options were available to us. Sanitary napkins were the ones that were given to us in that sense. So maybe schools can start that as well, maybe giving them the agency to choose which product they would like to use.
So, Subhiksha, do you also want to talk a little bit about the different products available, and how sustainability ties into it?
I am not sure I know all the products that are out there, but I can give you name some of them. So the first, obviously, is disposable napkins that are widely used. And then there's, that actually is not very good for your health, because you're placing it in your private area, and there's a lot of chemicals and plastic in it, and the blood is usually absorbed in the napkin, right? As opposed to let's say menstrual cup only collects your blood, it doesn't absorb. So there's less chances of any infections happening in that area, and you can use the cup for a longer time. So that is, and the cup, I think, can be used for over 8 to 10 years. You don't have to buy a cup. So if you have one cup, then you don't have to buy any other product. But for sanitary napkins, that's not the case. Obviously, we have to purchase them every other month, and we at least use 3 to 4 napkins per day if you are if you bleed regularly. So that's the sanitary napkin and the cup, but there's also cloth pad. For cloth pad, even though, so the menstrual cup and the cloth pad are sustainable options. Even though cloth pad is a sustainable option, it really is important for you to have certain kind of an infrastructural facility. You will need a lot of water to wash the cloth pad. So you need to be you need to be open enough to dry your pad outside in the sun, because if you don't dry it in the sun, then that also creates infections and problems for you down there. That is cloth. And a cloth can't be used for 8 to 10 years. You can maybe use it for a year, 2 years max. Apart from this, I'm thinking if there are any other
Tampons.
I can give you so much detail for any of the other products. So I'm going to stop with these three.
Okay. We've spoken a lot about how periods are perceived at home. But our conversations around in school, but our conversations around menstruation happening at home as well.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that, but before I do, I just want to just bring up one point. When we're talking about different period products, right? I think in the recent times, we've seen a lot of negativity towards those who use like disposal pads or, period products that aren't very environmentally friendly. And I think that's when we have to make the distinction that sustainability is subjective. What's sustainable for you might not be sustainable for me, right? Maybe there are people with vaginismus, there are people, who can't easily use a menstrual cup. Like she mentioned, there are different kind of infrastructures you need. If you're using cloth pads, it does require a lot more of your time, with respect to the washing, the drying, and if you're like, let's say, for example, like a busy working woman, maybe that's not the most sustainable option for you. And I feel like there's a lot of shaming that's been going around recently. There's a rise in shaming, which really needs to stop. Like there's a lot of pressure already on menstruators because of the whole taboo and stigma around. This doesn't need to be another one of them. So for me, like before I started Fullstopp, so I was really privileged in the sense that my mom did speak to me about periods before I got my first period. So it wasn't a surprise to me, but I know a large percentage of menstruators in India don't know about periods before they read Manoj, right? I was like, in our awareness session that we were hosting, at the end, we just have like a safe, open discussion where people can just share period stories. And I remember this one girl told me that when she got her period for the first time, she thought she was dying, right? So she saw blood and then she ran to her mom and she's like, I'm dying. So yeah, I don't think, I mean, of course, it depends from home to home. I had that conversation, like my mom had that conversation with me, for example, but we never ever spoke about periods at home before I started Fullstopp. And it wasn't easy for me to like, obviously like I'm discussing with my parents what I'm doing, right? When I started Fullstopp, when we were doing Fullstopp events, it wasn't to begin with the easiest conversation with my dad around, right? But just because of the taboo. I remember before, so I was an avid swimmer and I used to like train a lot, and whenever I had periods I had to come up with a lame excuse like, oh, I have to study, I have a test tomorrow, this and that, right? And of course that didn't feel really good, and I really wish I could have just told him I had my periods. So yeah, like I really feel like, of course, school, you have that conversation, but we need that conversation to be normalized at home as well, everywhere.
Even if I have to say what conversations are happening at home, I don't think that there are many, because even at my place, until I actually started working with Boondh itself, there weren't a lot of conversations that were about menstruation. And when I had my first menarche, I wasn't really I was just told to be careful, and I was just told to be a certain way, but I was not actually given the talk about what is going on in my body and why it's important and stuff like that. That kind of talk never happened in my house. But if I have to speak for everybody, like the general situation, I'm really not very sure. But my friends, and as far as my friends are concerned, and I am, we've not personally had that conversation at all in the house. And also, like when schools take up such conversations, it's also important for us to think about how, after having maybe an hour or two session about menstruation, kids actually come back home, to whatever customs are followed back in the house, and how we perceive menstruation in the house. So it's important for the parents and to actually change that conversation as well. They have the responsibility to do too, and the best way to do it is when there is general curiosity. And usually this happens at a very young age, even before the first menarche. So when you see television advertisements on TV, like maybe you will have questions, and when the questions are posed, maybe that's your way in to talking about it in the house. Yeah.
That actually brings us to the close of this conversation. If both of you have any, closing remarks to add, please go ahead.
Okay, great. So if somebody is passionate and wants to achieve like a more period positive world, there's a few ways that you can do that. And I'm talking with respect to Fullstopp, but there are amazing organizations out there that you can volunteer. And Fullstopp actually has a lot of posts about volunteering or donating to other organizations as well, working in the menstrual space. But coming back to Fullstopp, there are a few ways you can donate. First of all, obviously, all of our funds go into our operations as well as bringing menstrual products to underprivileged and marginalized menstruators. If you're not in a place to donate, that's completely fine. You can also devote your time by volunteering with us. And like we're open to volunteers of all ages from all, like different parts of the world, whatever your strengths are, be it digital design, if you're good at content, if you're good at anything, we'd love to have you on board. And most important, okay, so and we launched a survey to better understand practices with respect to menstruation in urban India. So please head over to our website. It's www.itsfullstop with two p's.com. And you can also sign one of the petitions that we're launching this month there, as well as, and this is the most important, just work towards like breaking the taboo in your own communities, right? Just have a conversation. If you see like your house help or anybody else that's in need of menstrual products, do your little bit, donate patch to them, just give it to them. Because like for me, I've never thought of Fullstopp as a charity. I feel like charity goes vertically, right, from up to down. For us, it's more about change and solidarity because that's more horizontal. So yeah, just do your little bit, have conversations with your friends, families, acquaintances, and yeah, that'll really go a long way in achieving a more period positive world.
So I want to say thank you to Siddhika, the Openhouse, for actually holding such conversations. They're so important, and I'm so glad that there's such space available right now for the current student generation. And I also want to say thank you to Anjali. It was so nice actually meeting her. It was a lovely experience. And I also want to talk about a couple of things that Boondh does and where we need your support, especially the student community, because we care more than, the rest of us tend to, and actually contribute to spaces that you believe in. So Boondh is doing a couple of campaigns, and one of the most recent campaigns that we're running is Stop Period Penalty, like I had mentioned earlier. And this the most important component of this project is a survey that we've put out recently that documents instances of menstrual exclusion and discrimination. And it's so important for us to have people filling this form out because we don't really have an idea of what it actually looks like. There's not a lot of research available, and so anecdotal evidence is all we have, and so every response counts. So please do fill out the form. I think this will be available on Open House's bio as well, the form. So it'll be lovely to hear your experiences and thoughts. Apart from that, there's also Periods and Patrikars, the campaign that we're running to highlight instances of media reportage on menstruation and how it can be better, more holistic. We are also going to be releasing a toolkit, a set of guidelines that the media can follow, and as readers, what we can do as well. So it'll be great if you can engage with that. Yeah, so that's all, I guess. You can search for our campaigns on our page itself. Hashtag stop period penalty, hashtag periods in patrikars as well. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation. It's such a wonderful way to start the day, to talk about periods and not call it by code words. I think there's a lot that we've spoken about the need for schools to talk about menstrual awareness and just in general, talking about some lived experiences of menstruating women. I think we need to be far more open about it. Um, and I hope that whoever tunes into this podcast, I hope a lot of boys tune in, honestly, and a lot of men tune in. But yeah, this has been really, really wonderful. Thank you so much.